Welcome to our series, Myers-Briggs for Midlife Career Changers. I'm David from EditBits.com, and I'm the producer for the series. Our expert is Edythe Richards, Myers-Briggs Master Practitioner and Career Counsellor specialising in adult career change. Welcome, Edythe.
Thanks, David. I'm glad to be here.
Great to have you here. Now, today we're going to be talking about the ENFJ personality type and successful career paths and work environments for ENFJs. We'll first have Edythe give an overview of this type, then we'll discuss the cognitive functions, which are the middle two letters of one's Myers-Briggs type, strengths and weaknesses of ENFJs, and finally, careers that ENFJs may want to consider. Edythe, can you begin by talking a little bit about your background and the purpose of the Myers-Briggs? Now, we've discussed this in depth in other podcasts, but I do think it bears repeating.
Sure. I've been using the Myers-Briggs as a personal and career development tool for over 15 years now, and one of the things that I stress is that the tool itself isn't what this is about. What's most important is how the information from the tool is presented, the delivery of the information in a meaningful and engaging way. Though this is important to each one of the 16 Myers-Briggs types, with ENFJ types it's particularly special because this type is all about effective communication, and we may see them molding their communication style based on their audience. I'd also like to mention to our listeners that much of what we're talking about here is true of many people with ENFJ preferences, but you as an ENFJ may find some of this doesn't apply to you, and that's okay. You're still a unique individual with unique interests and a unique career path.
And as you said before, Edythe, we're not trying to pigeonhole anyone or predict behaviour. That's not what this is about. What we'll be talking about is meant to be a general guideline for career development. And it's my hope that our ENFJ listeners will find at least some of these points very useful and will be able to implement this into their job search. So, before we go any further, let's get an overview of the four letters, E, N, F and J.
Sure, the E stands for extroversion. The preference of ENFJ types is to focus on the outer world of people and activity, directing their attention and energy outwardly. They receive energy from interacting with people and from taking action. The N stands for intuitive. When receiving information, they're naturally attuned to the big picture, not the details, focusing on the relationships and connections between facts. They grasp patterns and are oriented to future possibilities before present realities. The F is for feeling. They make decisions subjectively, not objectively, based on their own values and in honoring other people. They appreciate and support others, and their goal is to create harmony and treat each person as a unique individual. And lastly, the J is for judging. They prefer a structured approach to life rather than a flexible approach. They like to have things settled and stick to a plan. They tend to be methodical and organized and avoid last-minute stresses.
Great description, Edythe. Now, for our listeners, the Myers-Briggs is based on the idea that people have preferences to how they live life and interact with the world. For example, we all use both extroversion and introversion, but there's one that we prefer to use, and one that comes much more naturally for us.
Right. To demonstrate this, one exercise Myers-Briggs practitioners use is the handwriting exercise. Sign your name with your non-dominant hand, and note how it feels. It's probably awkward and difficult. And then note the outcome. The signature probably isn't as pretty as you'd like it to be. But if you sign your name as you normally would, note that you don't even think about doing this because you've done it hundreds of times before, and it's just very natural. The outcome is what you'd expect. Now, unless you've broken your hand or you're otherwise unable to sign your name, you have the ability to use both your right and your left hand. But clearly, you have a preference for one over the other.
I'm thinking now of people who are ambidextrous, who are skilled at both.
Yes, I'd expect you'd bring that up, David. But for most of us, we use our dominant hand without thinking about it, and it's just natural for us to do this. This is an analogy for our preferred functions, too. We have the ability to use both sides, both extroversion and introversion, for example. But there's one that's much easier and much more natural, so that's what I mean by using the word preference.
That's a good analogy, Edythe. Now, let's hear a little bit more about ENFJs. I'm quite keen to learn more.
And I'm excited to talk about them. ENFJs are warm and caring people, and they love people. They have great people skills and tend to be excellent communicators. They're also visionaries, and they apply their visions to intuitively gauge the strengths and flaws of others and articulate and implement an appropriate response. Perhaps their greatest gift is helping others develop themselves, and they're especially good at facilitating situations that require interpersonal sensitivity. They may take some time to get to know, as they tend to be reserved or even suspicious with strangers, which results from the fact that ENFJs are group-oriented big picture people, and they do take the time to find out where they stand in a new group situation. When ENFJs scan a situation, they're often aware of the many interpersonal dynamics that may be taking place. So from the start, they interpret each person's actions and reactions. For example, who seems stressed, who needs motivating, who needs a reality check, and providing direction and suggestions as appropriate. However, they may be offended if their suggestions aren't taken.
Ah, I see. And as you said, ENFJs are great communicators, and it sounds like they're quite liberal in showing how they feel in a given situation, especially if it's verbally demonstrating their appreciation for someone.
They do tend to have a great combination of inspiration, rapport, and naturally finding just the right words. And yes, because they're so persuasive, ENFJs are naturals at motivating people, even when those people were initially resistant. These tendencies, along with their gifts of imagination and inspiration, make ENFJs highly credible leaders who attract many followers.
Would it be fair to say that there must be a downside to giving so much of yourself to others, mainly that you neglect your own needs?
Yes, that's an area we'll talk about more extensively shortly. But yes, ENFJs can get so caught up in the needs of others that they fail to do what it takes to define themselves as individuals. As a result, some ENFJs may have this fake it till you make it mentality or mold themselves like chameleons depending on the situation. One ENFJ woman I know told me that for so much of her life she felt like a tumbleweed floating along wherever the wind took her, which was always wherever others wanted to go. And she was so used to living her life this way that making decisions for herself, for her own needs, was almost foreign to her.
Wow, that's something that must be difficult to come to terms with, at least without adequate self-awareness. But that's what we're trying to offer here. Isn't that right, Edythe?
Absolutely. And on the plus side, ENFJs are likely to be voted nicest or most congenial. They bring a sense of camaraderie in all they do, particularly in leading and facilitating teams. They're also great organizers, and they like to have things settled, but not so much that their environments are dull and unchallenging. ENFJs are all about coming to conclusions that are mutually beneficial.
And with that, let's talk about the cognitive functions now. For our listeners, cognitive functions refer to the middle two letters of one's Myers-Briggs type. This is essentially the heart of who we are, how we obtain information, and how we make decisions based on that information. For ENFJs, we'll be talking about feeling and intuition. One is dominant and one is auxiliary or secondary. Edythe, if I'm not mistaken, ENFJs are dominant extroverted feeling. Is that correct?
You're right, David. Essentially, what the functions mean in the Myers-Briggs is where we rely on for our overall behavior. Our dominant function is the first function to develop, and we can think of it as our favorite function. For ENFJs, this is extroverted feeling. If we recall, feeling is about making decisions based on harmony of group needs. Extroverted means that this function is visible to others. They're extroverting their decisions subjectively based on their own and others' values and ethics, with the goal reaching a conclusion that benefits everyone.
So, not only are we seeing a talent for taking care of the needs of others, we're seeing a political correctness and civility that I'm not sure we've seen in other types.
Well, like their ESFJ cousins, who are also dominant extroverted feelers, when asking about the ethical thing to do, they do tend to refer to societal norms, what other people feel. If they've done something wrong, the strongest cues will be not how they feel, but the reactions of others around them. Because extroverted feelers are keenly aware of others' feelings, they deliberately do or say things that have a positive impact on others and may therefore be known as people pleasers. Their facial expressions are often quite animated with big natural smiles. I'd say that one of the more marked features of extroverted feeling is indeed maintaining the social structure, standards, morals, and conventions of a situation or a culture or a work environment. But these folks also have the ability to stay informed on the moods of others and the new trends that in many ways are critical to survival in the business world. They also have a gift of convincing others through ethical implementations, and they're highly facilitative leaders, as we've already mentioned. At the same time, they're very uncomfortable with conflict. If someone on their team, for example, is having a bad day, the extroverted feeler is having a bad day.
It does sound as though they'll go to extreme lengths to provide what they believe is needed to maintain external harmony. This may come at a great personal cost. Now, how about the auxiliary or secondary function? Edythe, can you explain that to our listeners?
Sure. The auxiliary or secondary function for ENFJs is Introverted Intuition. This is the second function to develop and essentially the second favorite function for ENFJs. If we recall, intuition is an information gathering function based on abstract ideas and connections between seemingly unrelated people, objects, or events. Introverted means all of this information gathering is going on beneath the surface. This function seeks only one likely outcome and relies on process of elimination. So rather than creating new ideas, it connects existing ideas. Creativity for users of this function doesn't therefore involve brainstorming or generating possibilities, but around system building. It's natural for these folks to detach themselves from their surroundings and read between the lines. Then they try to guess what someone else is thinking and discover the underlying motivations. They're great with developing their unique understanding of concepts and expressing their insights through symbols, pictures, and analogies. They see time as a long flowing ribbon of connected events, taking a long-term perspective on many aspects of life. Their ability to plan for the future is exceptional, but they may forget to just simply enjoy the moment.
So, in many ways, this function is about searching for meaning and significance.
And the underlying commonalities, yes.
And how do these two functions, extroverted feeling and introverted intuition, work together, Edythe, for ENFJ career development?
ENFJs will fit most naturally in positions and work environments that are people-oriented, supportive, and organized, working for the betterment of others. Their extroverted feeling function means that their own sense of self is intertwined with that of others. So, like we said, while ENFJs are genuinely empathetic and gregarious people who want those they help to succeed, if those individuals end up failing, the ENFJ may come down hard on them, but that's because other people's failures are a reflection of the ENFJ's own personal failure. As extroverted feelers, ENFJs are first and foremost concerned with shaping good feelings in the immediate social environment. But combine this with the auxiliary function of introverted intuition, which is about creating an internal framework for how the world works and basing new possibilities on this framework and using patterns and trends to understand the future. And we can see why they're so good at reading and quickly assessing people and picking up on their emotional and behavioral cues. All of this spells self-esteem that is very much related to their social prowess and their image of those around them. But this brings up another point. Possibly very early in life, ENFJs are self-disciplined and goal-oriented, striving for excellence in whatever they do. And it's not long before they realize their power to influence and persuade others. As life goes on, they learn they can become quite adept at this to the point of manipulation. From that time on, ENFJs wrestle with this ethical dilemma. To what degree are they willing to use their charm and charisma to achieve their goals? Charming others is undoubtedly rewarding for ENFJs, but for most, this goes beyond the superficial. Most ENFJs I've worked with truly do want to preserve their integrity, and they'll do well to seek out work environments and positions where this is reinforced.
but it sounds like these are the leaders at an organisation most likely to bring out the best in their teams through motivation and inspiration. Let's talk about some other specific strengths of ENFJs, please, Edythe.
ENFJs are loyal and idealistic. At work, ENFJs are focused on the organization's ideals and operate within those ideals. Similarly, in relationships, ENFJs bring romance with a capital R. Relationships are everything. They value commitment and loyalty and look for these in a partner. They're also diplomatic and inspirational. ENFJs are generally able to communicate in ways that others feel excited about their ideas. They work hard to develop and maintain harmony. They're collaborative and nurturing. ENFJs have a high need to please others. Often they'll be perceived as a role model, something they enjoy. Last but certainly not least, ENFJs are goal-oriented leaders. Deadlines get met and requirements get fulfilled when an ENFJ is in charge, unless they're sidetracked by some immediate interpersonal need that takes precedence. Thus, they're often promotable within an organizational hierarchy. What motivates the ENFJ to climb the corporate ladder, however, is an organizational vision to serve people. ENFJs tend to be good at organizing and following through on all parts of projects, exciting others with their ideas and recruiting them to be part of the team, communicating and establishing rapport easily and gracefully, public speaking and leading group discussions on any size or subject, enthusiastically taking on new projects and seeing possibilities for solving problems in fresh ways, and making other people feel important and valued.
I see. They sound almost like cheerleaders, and by that I mean rallying support for their projects. I bet they're also involved in lots of different activities, both personally and professionally, and that they're the ones who assume responsibility for making these activities enriching experiences for everyone else.
Yes, that's a great observation, David, but this also brings us to some of the weaknesses of ENFJs, and one is in regards to all of their projects. They may tend to be controlling and manipulative when their ultimate goal is to be personally recognized for their efforts. It's not uncommon for younger ENFJs especially who haven't learned balance to rally others through a sense of martyrdom and possibly guilt. This can result in passive aggressiveness. Yes, it's hard for them to be direct when it involves harmony and other people's feelings. Additionally, ENFJs may become blindly loyal to causes undeserving of them. Because ENFJs take their causes seriously, they may feel disillusioned when the cause is challenged or found to be undeserving, sweeping problems under the rug. Because they're so eager to be liked, ENFJs may avoid conflict or confrontation, taking criticism personally. In their good intentions, ENFJs may show others the error of their ways and redirect them to real joy, whatever the ENFJ deems that to be. Any resistance, when in the ENFJ's mind they're merely trying to help, can cause them to become agitated and illogical, thus making hasty decisions. ENFJs are so eager to have things decided and projects finished that they sometimes rush through. They want to appear capable and in control, and thus they may hesitate from asking for help or admitting that they need to start over. ENFJs need to watch their tendency to make decisions too quickly before gathering all the facts, take any criticism personally, take on too many projects at once and feel overwhelmed, become bored with repetitive tasks and then begin to make mistakes, let conflicts build rather than being direct and upfront, and see people as they wish they were rather than as they really are.
Now, I know you advocate learning to use our non-preferred functions in order to not only work on our weaknesses, but gain healthy balance in our careers and our lives. Do you have any specific strategies that can help ENFJs with this?
I do. Gaining some confidence in our non-preferred functions can always help us work on our problem areas. Our non-preferred functions are the ones that don't appear in our 4-letter Myers-Briggs code, but they are functions that we use. We just typically don't like to use them, and therefore we don't have as much confidence in them. ENFJ areas for improvement will most likely come from the underdeveloped sides of sensing and thinking functions. For those ENFJs with the need to develop the sensing function, which is all about gaining confidence, obtaining concrete, practical information, approach projects with a clear sense of the logical steps necessary to make the project a success. Start using SMART goals which are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. Break your big ideas down into specific, tangible steps. Recognize other people's limitations. Pay attention to current needs, logical consequences, and situational requirements. And finally, make sure you have enough information before coming to a conclusion. For ENFJs who need to develop the thinking function, and this will be related to objective decision making, focus on the problem rather than the people involved first. Rather than criticizing, clearly state what the needs are. Resist the urge to micromanage. This is something ENFJs are known to do, especially when under stress or deadlines. And finally, know that conflict may be useful to relationships in clearing the air and giving new perspectives. What can ultimately result are deeper, more meaningful relationships.
Good advice there. So, for ENFJs, understanding and implementing strategies to develop their non-preferred functions of sensing and thinking can ironically help them become more attuned to the needs of others and help them pursue their mission with integrity.
That's right. As I've said many times, too much of a good thing isn't a good thing. And ENFJs, just like all Myers-Briggs types, have areas to work on. When we're in balance, when we're using all of our functions effectively, we are our best selves and we can make the best decisions for our lives and careers, and we can interact with others most effectively.
Excellent. Now, we're coming to the portion of the podcast I think many of our listeners are waiting for. Specific career paths and work environments for ENFJs. So, Edythe, let's hear about the ENFJ workplace needs first.
Most people tend to be drawn towards those careers that make use of their natural preferences. When we're able to use our natural preferences all or most of the time in our jobs, we're more likely to be energized and satisfied, and the work is more likely to be stimulating and enjoyable. We're also more likely to meet similar types of people in these environments. For ENFJs, in order for a career to be satisfying, they need the opportunity to meet new people and develop warm, long-term relationships, clear expectations from others, and a system that recognizes their contributions, allowing them to develop personally and professionally. The chance to think about possibilities and work on creative solutions to problems that will help others improve the quality of life, a supportive and friendly environment where they work with people they trust and like, and where they feel appreciated for their efforts, and the ability to work on many interesting projects using their great organizational skills and maintaining a high degree of control and responsibility.
Given the loyal and enthusiastic nature of the ENFJs, I don't find these surprising at all. Okay, Edythe, let's move on now to specific career paths, please. And for our ENFJ listeners, if you don't see your career path here, or if you're considering something that's not shown, please don't panic.
Right, thanks for mentioning that, David. We'll find successful ENFJs in all fields, and your career choice is going to be based on a lot more than the Myers-Briggs measures. These fields are meant to serve as a guideline for you and at the same time let you know that there are other people out there who understand where you are right now, many of whom have probably at one time or another had similar struggles to yours.
I imagine that's quite comforting to hear. Now, Edythe, what are the career areas most selected by other ENFJs?
Careers most often selected by ENFJs fall into 4 categories: communications, counseling, education and human services, and business consulting.
Okay, let's begin with what sounds like the obvious choice for many ENFJs, the communications category.
Indeed it does. Careers in this category include communications director, writer or journalist, public relations or advertising specialist, entertainer or artist, fundraiser, TV producer and newscaster, recruiter, and politician. As we've seen, ENFJs are masterful communicators. They're motivated to understand and please others, so they often possess great tact and diplomacy. They sometimes prefer the spoken word to the written word, but many ENFJs are good writers as well. They enjoy the process of gathering information and interviewing people, coming to understand the underlying personal side of a story or issue. The world of advertising, PR, and fundraising is a satisfying one when the ENFJ believes in the service or cause, and the atmosphere is not too competitive or conflict-ridden.
Yes, their ability to establish relationships quickly with persuasive skills and charisma make these pretty natural areas to think about. Edythe, how about the counselling category?
In this category, ENFJs generally find career satisfaction in helping others find happiness and contentment in their lives through self-understanding. Thus, psychologist, career, personal, or outplacement counselor, health advisor, and counseling for clergy or ministry are good choices. ENFJs often enjoy careers where they're able to share their own values with others and to help themselves and others reach their full potential. They can easily see possible options or solutions and can help their clients see them as well.
Yes, as we've heard, being of service to others is very important for ENFJs. And all of these paths are organising others to implement some type of positive change. Okay, and next we have the education and human services category.
In this category, we have teacher in health, art, drama, or English, college professor in the humanities, dean of students, residential housing director, social worker, and nonprofit organization director. ENFJs are often drawn towards education because it gives them an opportunity to work directly with other people, helping them to grow and develop. They prefer teaching subjects where they can focus on the meaning of the material, teaching through interpretation, and a cooperative work environment that's tolerant of all views, fostering the open sharing of opinions and feelings. Human service organizations are often appealing to ENFJs because they provide an opportunity to work towards improving the quality of life for themselves and others. ENFJs like to be leaders, as we've already discussed, and in control of their projects as much as possible, and to see the positive results from their efforts.
So, having talked about work environments for ENFJs, to me it sounds as though the work environment is as important, if not more important, than the role. As long as the ENFJ has some kind of sense of control and is in an active and challenging environment. Like many of these in the education and non-profit sectors, they're probably going to be quite satisfied and do pretty well.
That's an excellent point, David, and with that, they do need to be surrounded by other friendly and creative people, and they'll definitely find it in these environments. So lastly, we'll talk about business consulting. Popular choices for ENFJs in this category include Human Resources Manager, Training and Development Manager, Sales Manager or Trainer, Program Designer, and Small Business Executive. The many varied jobs in the consulting profession can provide satisfaction to ENFJs because they offer independence while maintaining a close affiliation with others. ENFJs are excellent presenters and trainers, especially when helping individuals and groups improve their performance. They can be creative designers of new programs and services if those programs benefit others. They tend to prefer executive positions in smaller organizations where they can have a positive impact, can enjoy variety and new ways of doing things while still maintaining a certain amount of control.
All of these career paths hit upon things that ENFJs need in their lives. And as a gentle reminder to our ENFJ listeners, to be successful, it's important to develop appropriate balance. We know that when you're on track, you're implementing new ideas and exploring new approaches, especially those that will improve the lives of other people in environments where you're acknowledged for your contributions and can see the positive outcome of your efforts. Did I get that right, Edythe?
You did. Great job. I'll add that ENFJs also need to establish and maintain warm and supportive interpersonal relationships with their coworkers and clients, and this is absolutely necessary in any career path or work environment they choose.
Yes, and I believe that sums up the ENFJ podcast nicely. Edythe, as we're wrapping up, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yes, though much of this information in this podcast comes from my own knowledge of and experience using the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, some additional sources that can be helpful for further reading: Type Talk by Otto Kroger, Life Types by Jean Kumaro and Sandra Hirsch, and Do What You Are by Paul Teeger and Barbara Barron-Teeger.
Edythe, thanks once again for sharing your expertise. Now, Edythe's website is www.atopcareer.com. Please do check it out for more Myers-Briggs podcasts, articles and information. I'm David, producer of this series, Myers-Briggs for Midlife Career Changers. Until next time. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and of course our website, where you can sign up for our newsletter at www.atopcareer.com. Feel free to share this file with your friends. Until next time. MBTI and Myers-Briggs are registered trademarks of the MBTI Trust.